Okay, today is Wednesday, February 3rd. This is CAD 212, Class 5. Today in class, we're going to go over a quick wall review, just because it was very lecture heavy on Monday. Just to kind of give you a little refresher course, we're going to go over that today. We're going to learn how to create materials today. We're talking about doors, how we'll import those into our model, and windows are the same. And then you'll begin your floor plan after that. So we'll just kind of go through how you should start the floor plan and give you some ideas how to do that. Your progress is due on Sunday by 11 p.m. And remember, that's not going to be graded. These assignments aren't graded. These are just so I can check your progress. You don't have to have everything done. The more you have done, the easier it will be on you. But this also just kind of helps me keep track of your work, much like if we were live in class, how I could go around and see how you're doing and things like that. This is the best way I can kind of figure out how to do it in this class. So just turn in your progress by Sunday, even if you just have your walls done. At least I can get a chance to take a look at that. And I try and do it by, usually I try, well, it's all new, so I'll try and get that reviewed as soon as possible for Monday, at least before Wednesday, but we can talk about that again on Wednesday, next week on Monday. All right, let me go ahead and start with just the wall review, and then we'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions that we have, and then we'll jump into creating materials. So this is a repeat, a little bit of last class, and then we'll jump into the new stuff after that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off and jump into Revit. Okay, so I'm going to start with a new template. I'll go to architecture template. And I'm going to start creating a new wall again. We'll just do a quick repeat of how to do that. And I'm just going to create the external wall this time, because this is the wall that you're going to start with when you're actually starting to lay out your drawing. Remember, we did get those external measurements of your house, those external wall measurements. So we're going to start with just the external walls from there, and then I'll move into some internal walls. But let's just start with the external wall to begin with. So that's going to be 5.5 inches for everybody. We have to have some universals, so the wall sizes are one of them. So remember, to, in order to start drawing your wall, you're going to go to Architecture tab, Build Panel, Wall Tool. Make that active. We're going to go to our Properties and our Type Selector in our Properties. We'll do that drop down. I can start with an 8.5 inch generic. It doesn't matter what size generic we start with, as long as it's a generic wall. Next, I'm going to jump into Edit Type. Remember, we always want to duplicate that first. And now I'm going to rename my wall. Now it's going to be Wall Exterior 5.5 inches, and my initials, or your initials, and hit OK. So now we're going to go into Edit Here. This is where we actually create our wall with the different materials and things. Remember, we can come down to this bottom left-hand button, Preview, and open it up to see what that wall is going to look like as we created. This is a top-down view, a plan view. And then this is our section view. So remember, only structural material lies within these core boundaries, but this is only one material. I have to add 2 more materials. I'm going to insert 2 more materials. This is the exterior side, which is facing out into the world. I'm going to move 1 material up outside the core boundary. So I'm just going to move it up. I'm going to click on 1 and make it active. and move it down outside the core boundary. It doesn't matter which one you move. They're all the same right now. One says 5 inches, but we're going to change the thickness of all of these, remember. Okay. So when you're given this on an exam, you'll be told exactly like what material the wall will be and how thick the wall will be, and pretty much how it's supposed to be constructed. But you will have to move kind of everything in place and then also fix the function. So the first thing we want to do after we add these new materials is we want to change the thickness. So since this one's active, we'll go ahead and change this to a 1/2 inch piece of gyp. This is going to be 4 and 1/2 inches of softwood lumber. And this one's 1/2 inch gyp also. So now that I have my thicknesses correct, the total thickness of the wall is now 5.5 inches. To change the function of it, how this material works within your Revit model, we have to change the function. So since this is an exterior wall, on the exterior side, that material is going to be a finish layer 1. Finish layer 1 is always the material that faces out into the world. Sometimes when we create an internal wall, both of these will be finish layer 2, but for this, if there's actually an exterior wall, it's going to be finish layer 1.
I have a question on this, like, wall construction part. What exactly is meant by the core boundary and like above and below wrap? Like what are they referring to with that?
So when we create the wall, let me go ahead and, oh, well, actually we do have the thicknesses. Let me zoom in on here. So you see how we have 3 layers right now on this wall? So this right here is your gyp board. This is our softwood lumber, and this is going to be our gyp board as well. Core boundary is what Revit uses to acknowledge what the layer that's actually the structural part of the building. There's nothing that's going to show up as a thickness or anything. It's always going to show up as a 0. So we always want to leave that alone. You don't need to do that. It can, it's just a way of Revit to kind of to acknowledge that this is the part of the building that's structural. So we're not really going to touch with that in any way. You know, there will be times that probably in structural class that Miss A will have you like build maybe a more, I'm not sure how she does that class, maybe a more structural wall. But for this class, you just need to know that the structural material is like a 2x4. It could be a CMU, which is a concrete masonry unit. It could be a metal, it could be a metal 2x4, things like that. So it's just pretty much the part of the building that's the actual building material of the wall itself. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, it does. So it's like each component of like the wall's construction.
Yeah, well, not each component, but the actual structural part of it. And that structure meaning the part that's keeping the actual wall up, not the finished layers on the outside of it or anything.
Okay. And the above and below wrap, what is above and what is below?
That was when we added new material. Say if I added an extra piece of material here, just when I hit insert, how this kind of popped up in this location here. When I put this piece outside the core boundary on the top of it, this moves this piece of material to the exterior side, and it moved this piece of material to the interior side. So it's just a way when this piece is active, it's blacked out, so it's active, and I can use these directional buttons to move the location of it. And then I accidentally made this extra piece of material, I can now delete it. So it's just a way for me to move this piece. So the only piece of material of this wall that's going to lie within the core boundary will be our structural members, which should be the CMU, softwood lumber, the metal 2x4s, and then you move outside the core boundary, the finish layers. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So yeah, it's just kind of making like, it's a way to determine the different functions of these material for Revit to process that. And that way you can kind of extrapolate that information out from there. We don't, that's really much more high level than we get into in this class. But it is good to know how, the purpose of it. So yeah, not a problem. So for the same thing here, for the function of this piece, since this is on the interior side, we're going to change this to a finish layer 2. And after we have the thickness and the function laid out, we're going to go ahead and jump in and change the material. So under the structural material, the part that lies within the core boundary, I'm going to change that to softwood lumber. I also want to click on Use Render Appearance on here always and hit OK. For my finish layers, I'm going to do a search here for gypboard and just type gyp, and that's gypsum wallboard. And I also want to use the render appearance for that as well. And for my finish layer 2, I'm going to use gypboard as well, since that was the last material that I accessed. I have this here as well. So hit OK. Actually, when I'm constructing this wall, can anybody catch the mistake I made? No, I did say this was an exterior wall. I put gypboard on my exterior side of my wall. So that would be wrong. So since I'm making an exterior wall, I need to go back in and change this material from gypsum wallboard to brick or something else. So I can go ahead, I don't need to create a new wall. I can just go back in and I can change this material. And I'm just going to change that to brick. And then I have to go ahead and hit Use Render Appearance as well. I can hit OK at this time. Now I've created the wall that is correct. Now I have brick on my exterior side of my exterior wall. I have softwood lumber on the inside, the structural part of it, what's holding up the wall, and I have the gypboard on the inside of my wall. You notice when I changed the different material, how this cut pattern changed here as well. Just a different way to kind of keep track of what these different functions are. It also changed the color of this as well too. So that's one thing that is nice about Revit. You're not going to have to go back and redo everything. Sometimes you can just go back and edit it and fix it like that. All right, let's jump out of this and hit OK. Okay, now we have my wall that's built. Say that my first measurement that I'm going to lay out for my floor plan is going to be this wall up here. Say that's 19 feet. I can just go ahead and start drawing at this point. I can lay that out to exactly 19 feet if I wanted. Say this next wall right here that I'm going to draw is 32 feet 7 inches. Well, I'm going to get it close to that. Say just a shotgun house. It's just a rectangle. That location line is going to pop up, so that end of those two walls are now even. And I can click there and I can connect these guys up at this point. So let's go zoom in a little closer and take a look at that and make sure that our measurements are correct. So if I click on this wall, well, actually, let me click on this wall. Remember, it's the wall that you click on is the wall that's going to move. So I clicked on this wall to make it active to get this measurement up here, this dimension. And when I change this dimension, this is the wall that's going to move. It's either going to move this way or this way. But I need to make sure that my external wall measurements are correct. Well, when these temporary dimensions pop up, these temporary dimensions are actually doing a measurement from the center line of the wall, and that is not correct. We need them to measure from the external wall line. So I'm going to click on the nodes on the temporary dimension. And now it's on the outside wall. And now it's on the outside wall. And notice how much our dimension is off now. It's off by 5.5 inches. So if that external wall measurement is 19, I need to now change this to 19 feet. Notice how that wall moved this way. So now this external dimension is correct. It's set at 19 feet. I can lock this in place now so it doesn't move. And sometimes we will grab a wall and it will move by mistake. I can go ahead and click on this temporary dimension. Click on the temporary dimension again. This lock will pop up. And now I can lock that in place. Now that's going to be locked. So I'm going to move over here to get the dimensions on this wall. So I have the same issues on this one. This is actually supposed to be 30, I think I said 32 foot 7 inches, something like that. I need to set my temporary dimensions to the correct location to start with, the external wall and the external wall. Now I need to change this to 32 foot 7 inches. Notice when I'm typing out my dimensions in Revit, I don't need to use the inches and feet all the time. When I'm typing these dimensions here, I can just type 32 space 7, and it'll know it's 32 feet 7 inches. Notice how that wall came down when we moved that. I want to do the same thing here, lock it in place. Click on the marker, click on the dimension. This lock will pop up, and now I can lock it in place here. Now, as we go through and start getting more complicated models, these temporary dimension lines are just going to start muddying up our drawings. So we don't want to take a look at them all the time. We can actually delete these now. So I'm going to delete this one. An error message will pop up. It's saying that if you delete this, the wall is still going to be constrained in place. You can unconstrain it now, but we don't want to do that. We do know it's still going to be constrained, and we're okay with that. Same thing for this one. We go to delete that. Same warning. That's okay, and we'll delete it. So now we've got our building locked in place. Next thing you want to do is add your internal walls. You want to go ahead and create that internal 4.5 inch wall. I'm not going to create another wall just for time. But say this was a 4.5 inch wall. And the next thing you want to do is measure, say you have a room right here. That's going to be like 10 by 12. Well, notice that is the midpoint there. I'm just going to start drawing anywhere here. So it's going to be like 10 by 12. So I'm going to get it kind of close. So the same thing that applies for our temporary dimensions is going to be used for our external walls, is going to be used for our internal walls as well. So at this point, I'm going to click on this internal wall. These temporary dimensions will show up. Once again, I have to align my temporary dimensions with the correct location for them to measure from. So that's going to be my internal wall to now my internal wall. So if this is a 10-foot wall, I need to go down here, click this, change that to 10 feet, and that's going to move that wall into place. Now we can lock our internal walls as well, but I recommend you kind of laying out all your internal walls before you start locking internal walls, just because things are going to be off a little bit, and that we're aware of, because we don't know the actual thickness of your external walls. It can throw off the measurements of your internal walls. Just get these as close as possible, and then we can talk about that on Monday. The important thing is to know how to adjust these so you can get these as correct as possible. So the next thing we want to do is click on this wall right here, this internal wall, to get this measurement correct. Now remember, we've got to click our nodes on our temporary dimensions to measure from internal wall to internal wall. And if this was 12 feet, now I can click on this and make this 12 feet. And this is the appropriate size wall. Then I can continue on drawing my different walls from here, my different internal walls and stuff, depending on the measurements that I've used. So the first thing you want to do before you lay out any windows or doors or anything like that is get these internal measurements correct. So first thing, external walls, then jump into your internal walls, and then we'll go from there. Any questions about this so far, y'all? It's going to take a little practice. It's like putting the puzzle together, so don't stress over it. I give you extra time just to make sure that the initial floor plan is laid out correctly. That's really the most important thing. So it's just going to take a little practice and a little figuring out. It's not a problem.
Hey, real quick.
Yes.
You're talking about like we have some due next week on Monday.
This
so
is
like
not just your progress. Not everything has to be finished. I just want to see your progress, because this is not, your progress is not going to be graded. I'm just going to, just a way for me to keep track of your work. Much like if I was in class, I'd be going around looking at your work and see how you're doing and seeing if I could catch any issues before they get, before they extrapolate and get harder to fix later on. So yeah, it's so.
I get that. I'm saying like progress in what? Like putting our floor plan in Revit? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay. And if we're doing that, like how when it comes to laying down walls, like how thick should our walls be? Like
that was the 5.5 inches that we talked about here. We just created that 5.5 inch external wall, and you're
so it
going
has
to
to be like that so you want those walls exactly those ones we make. Dude, does like Revit save that once you make one?
It saves it within your model. In this model that we're working on, yes, it is saved. If you go to another model and open another model, then you'd have to create another wall. But within this model that we're making, that wall is saved. That's the whole reason that we duplicate and rename it. So when we go back in here, here's the wall that I created.
Right.
All exterior 5.5 inches. So like if I click on this wall right here, it's going to, and I go back to my type selector, it tells me that it's a basic wall, generic 5.5 inches. But say I wanted to swap this out to another wall type, I can do that from the walls I've already created, and they're already within my model. So now I change that to this type of wall. If I wanted to change it to another type of wall, say a brick wall, I can do that by just clicking on that as well.
Okay, so we have a special wall that we need for the exterior. Did you make one for the interior, or we can just use whatever?
You're going to use the same technique to create that for your interior wall as well. We went over that in class on Monday, and this was just a refresher for today, so I didn't do that. From here, you're going to have to create that external wall, which is 1/2 inch siding, softwood lumber gypboard, and then your external wall is going to be created the exact same way, except you're going to be 1/2 inch of gypboard on one side, 3.5 inch lumber on the inside, and 1/2 inch on the outside. And that's in class one. That's in the last class as well, which is available online.
Word. All right, thank you.
All right. All right, where was I? All right. Any other questions about this before we jump on? Okay, another big kind of lecture that we want to go over today is how to create materials. This is going to, you can say, for instance, the material that the wall we just built, if you don't have a brick exterior wall, say you have siding, but within the model already preloaded, there's no siding. So we want to create a siding material so you can make that siding. And you're going to be creating materials a lot when it comes to paint and flooring and all sorts of fun stuff. So in order to create different materials that we can use, we want to go to our Manage tab. And our Materials tool over here in our Settings panel. So let's go ahead and open up the materials tool. This should look familiar. This should look exactly, it's the same thing that we used before when we were in the wall. But here we can create new materials. So I'm going to go down here to this lower left-hand corner where this little orb is, and it says creates and duplicates new materials. We always want to start with a brand new material. So you always want to create new. When we do that, it's going to come up with a default new material. And then we want to rename it. So I'm going to call this siding and my initials. Now I'm going to go into my asset browser, which is all the cool stuff that Revit has where we can really personalize things. You can see that there's a ton of stuff in here that we can choose from to personalize it and things like this. And what you can do this week is just kind of go in here and kind of practice making new materials and play with this and stuff. And it's really where we can, you know, really personalize it. And it's really kind of fun once you get used to it. So you can search up here, but I don't recommend that because it's not really the best way to search stuff. I don't know, they haven't worked that, made it very intuitive yet. So I just know to kind of scroll through and I know what I'm looking for. So it just takes a little time for that. So I'm going to pick this horizontal 6-inch beige siding. There's two ways that we can load it into our project itself. So we can double click on it, or we can click on these double arrows. See how if we linger over that, it says replaces the current asset. So you can click on it like that. If it has this lock in here, this just means that this particular asset is locked. You cannot change it or anything. It doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means you can't go in and manipulate it. There's no way to change it. It comes as is. Notice there's also, if you want to make an indoor pool later on, there's pool water and stuff like that. There's all sorts of fun things in here we can do to play with it. All right. Once I select that one, I double click or click on the double arrows. I can close this. Notice that this is now populated within this. So this new material that I made is called Siding MCM. This is what it's going to look like. I'm going to jump back to my graphics appearance. I'm going to hit use render appearance on here as well, so that color changes as well. And hit OK. So I've just made a new material. So what I can do for that, a couple different things. If I wanted to go into, let me jump into 3D by going to my quick access toolbar, clicking on the little logo. If I click on this wall, actually, I'm going to go ahead and go down to my visual styles. I'm going to change that to consistent color. Here's what my brick looks like. Let's take a look at what it would look like realistically. So it's got a soldier course brick on here. I'm going to turn that back to consistent color. I prefer to work in that one. Now, if I just click on this wall, and I go and make that wall type active, and I go into edit type, and then I'm going to go into edit again, and I'm going to change this material from brick to the material I just made. And hit OK. Hit OK. OK. And now it's changed all of my walls at one time. And I turn it on realistic, and you see that there's siding on there. The more you play with it, the easier it'll get. The main thing to pull from this is that how to create materials. We'll keep consistently going over how to create materials. But if you wanted to do something a little bit more fancy than use that brick, you can go ahead and create new materials. There's a couple different ways that we can change that. But I want you to start practicing that. So I'm going to do one more material on here for you. So I'm going to click on materials. I'm going to open another new material, create new, rename that. Now I'm going to do this one as stucco. Excuse me, y'all. My sinuses are just terrible. I'm going to go into my asset browser and I'm going to look for stucco. There's other bricks types you can use if you want to do like a light brick or something, if you've got that. All sorts of things. Here's different flooring that we can create later on. If you want to do wood walls, if you want to do paneling or something, you can do that as well. Here's some different carpets and things that you can pick from. Sand. They've actually added here's some shakes. That always adds a nice effect. And as you can see, sometimes it's kind of hard to find the one you want, even when you scroll down here. So let's see what happens when we search up here. So it only gives me a limited amount of stucco in here, which is not great, which is why I like to scroll through it. It really, it's one of the things that they need to finish. So I'm just going to pick this fine white stucco to work with for now. I double clicked on that, made it active. We'll close that. Jump to graphic appearance. Use render appearance there as well and hit OK. So now that's how you create another material. We'll create materials a lot for all sorts of things throughout the building when we start getting to floors and things like that and paints and stuff. So just for this, I just wanted you to start practicing making materials. Any questions about that? Okay, next thing we're going to go on to is how to drop in doors and windows. And that's going to finish up our lecture for today. Doors and windows are inserted very similarly, and we'll just kind of jump into that. All right, let's do doors first. So anytime you're inserting a door or a window, you always have to be in a plan view. So I'm going to jump back to my level 1. I'm going to go back to my architecture tab, to my build panel, to my door tool. If I go down to my properties and my type selector, and if I click on here, the only type of door that is preloaded in here is a single flush door. Just to go ahead and use one of those doors to start with so you can figure out how to start placing it. We'll use one of these. We'll do a 36-inch by 84-inch door. Notice when I click that and make it active, it's giving me this little symbol that I can't do anything with. So I'm going to bring it over here. It's not going to do anything. I have to have a wall up and active in order to place that door. So if there's a gap in a wall, I can't put a door there. I have to have a wall in place in order to place that door. And notice as I start, kind of lingering over here a little bit, my temporary dimensions are popping up. These are what's going to help me place it to the in the correct location. So I'll drop that door in place. While that door is still active, I have my temporary dimensions. I'm going to click on this temporary dimension so I know that's my internal wall measurement. I'm going to click on this node to change the location of that. Now I have my temporary dimension from the internal wall to the door opening itself. And say that's supposed to be just 4 foot. And type 4 there, and that will move that door into place. If the door is swinging in the wrong direction, I don't have to redo it. I can just click on these little directional arrows and swap the location of which way the door was supposed to go. And Now it's going to measure from this side again, and that is still going to be 4 feet. So let's do another door. That's a door that's already preloaded in Revit, but we can load other doors into this model. We can go up to our door tool. Remember, this is the only one that's currently available, but there's a ton of other doors Revit has. So the next step you want to do is go over here to load family. Once we do that, we have this new library that pops up. We want to go down to doors. Double click. And now there's a ton of doors that show up. There's a couple different options here. We have these extra doors up here. We've got these doors in here. If you click on it once, over here, it's going to give you a preview of what it looks like. Even has garage doors, single panel doors. This is actually kind of what we already have in there. If you go into residential here, there's more doors available here. Click on it once just for the preview. So let's use this one. This is an interior door. I'm going to double click on that. That's going to give me another window that looks like this. This is giving me all sorts of different dimensions. So you can see that we have much smaller doors that we can use here, up to our 3-foot door. So we have a little bit more flexibility if we're making like closets or something like that. I'm going to pick this one here, the 36 by 96, and hit OK. Same thing, when that comes into my project, notice over here in my type selector, this is the one that's now active. Now, if I wanted to drop my door here, I could just drop that there. Typical measurement from the internal wall to the opening of the door is at least 6 inches that you want to have here. So I can change that to 6 inches by clicking on these nodes, putting them in the right location that I want, and changing this to 6 inches. Once again, I could lock that in place if I wanted to. I don't want to lock that in place for now. We can do that later, because when we're first laying these out, it gets a little confusing. So windows are done the exact same way. Let's jump into windows real quick. For windows, once again, architecture tab, build panel, window tool. So windows, if we go to our properties and our type selector, we have a few more different types of windows available that we can choose from. But let's go ahead and jump right into load family. And I'm going to go back to US Imperial. I'm going to scroll down to Windows. These are all the different windows I have available now that I can choose from. It's a pretty nice selection. So you got like a skylight, something like this. All sorts of fun stuff that you can click through and kind of choose from. Let's just use this one for now. I'll double click on that. Same type of window. It gives us the measurements that we want. Let's use this big one down here. So same thing, I need to have a wall active in order to place this window. I can't just place it anywhere. I have to be on a wall in order to place that window. So I'm going to just drop it here for now. My temporary dimensions are still available. Say it's 1 foot from this internal wall to this window opening. Click, make sure these guys are in the right location. I'm going to type 1 foot, and that's going to move that to where it's supposed to be. Another thing that you'll notice on here is that these window toggles, these arrow locations are in place. A lot of times windows will get placed backwards. It just happens that when you're starting out, you just kind of drop in the window and you don't realize it's backwards. But a way to kind of catch that when you do that is, as long as these directional arrows are on the outside of the wall, you know your window's not backwards. if we click on that, notice it'll flip those windows this way. This one's kind of easy to figure out that it's backwards because these windows open out. But it's always a default. Always know that if, as long as these directional arrows, these little toggle arrows, are on the outside of the wall, your window is facing in the correct direction. So here, if I wanted to swap out to a different type of window, I want to make sure that that window's off. Now I can go back here into Windows. If I wanted to pick just one of these other windows, I can pick that. Let's just pick this one. We already have the size entered on this. I'm going to come over here and drop this window here. And if I cancel that, if I go back to my window, my temporary dimensions are not available, so I can't get the correct dimension that I want. I can't see that. I can't flip these back and forth at this time, but I don't have the correct dimension. So I want to go back into my window, pick that window again, and make sure while I have it active that I get it placed in the right location. And say that's 3 foot. Now let's jump to 3D and see what we did. So you can see just with those few little actions, we've actually got a lot done. It's starting to already look like a house. We don't need to worry about drawing these other elevations and stuff like that. Say if we go to the south elevation, we just double click it here, the north elevation, south. We can see we already have our south elevation with all the stuff that we've correctly input on here. So this is one of the cool things about Revit, is that once you do something in one part of Revit, it will populate in the other sections of Revit as well, which is cool. Remember to, if we want to kind of work through our drawing, if we wanted to go to 3D, we can go to this area here, but also we can use these tabs now that this tab is active. If I double click on that tab, it'll bring me back to that 3D view as well. And if I wanted to realign the house to the way it's supposed to be, I can click on that little house and it'll bring me back to this view always. And once again, I can kind of twist the house around to see what we're going to do this a lot, so we can kind of access what we want to draw. So you just click on the cube and it'll spin around, or you can just click and hold and like spin it around yourself and get confused, and then come back up here to this little one and click it, and that'll reorient it to the correct viewpoint for you. So that's it for today. Short lecture today after the really long one the other day. What I would do if I were y'all, I would go ahead and start practicing my walls, creating those walls as they're supposed to be, 5.5 inches for your exterior, 4.5 inches for your interior, and start trying to lay out your floor plan. It's just a matter of getting in there and using your temporary dimensions to lock that into place. So I'd start working on that today. And then is whatever progress you get through by Sunday evening, just upload that so I can check your progress, and then we can answer any questions on Monday or anything like that. This is not for a grade. Remember, this is just so I can see how you're doing and that you're keeping up with class, or if you're having some issues. I do that because sometimes people, they don't realize they made a 1 foot thick wall, and you want to correct that early in the progress, as opposed to like, in 2 weeks from now, where it can mess up a lot of stuff. So let's open the floor for any questions, and then we can go from there.
So by Sunday, you will like a wall structure of a building with doors in place and windows?
That is optimal. Optimal would be if you can get your entire floor plan done. That would be good for you. If not, that's not a problem either. I mean, this is not, the entire project is not due until midterm. So a lot of times, especially when you're starting out in Revit, it's hard to just kind of start, getting our feet planted as far as, getting this all laid out. So sometimes it takes a little longer for people. So if you don't have all of this done by Sunday, that is okay. It's just a matter of starting it, seeing what you can do, finding out what questions that you have. That way, when we come back on Monday, I can answer those questions, or we can review that again on Monday. We will be going on to new stuff on Monday, but it's really important to get these basics down and to make sure that your walls are aligned to the correct measurements.
Do we have a set of measurements for the walls?
Yes, they're right here on the screen. They're on your, they're also available on Canvas in your lesson plan. So wall sizes are external walls 5.5 inches, internal walls 4.5 inches. You don't have to worry about the height for now. If you end up with different height walls, that's not a problem. That's even better because we'll learn how to manipulate that later on.
Yes, so it doesn't have to be a specific dimension in the wall length.
The wall length will be determined by your floor plan, remember?
Okay, yes.
So you're going off the dimensions that you got from when you started creating your floor plan.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else, y'all? Okay. If there's no other questions, let's go ahead and drop. I'll get this loaded on to YouTube today. I was a little slow on the last one. I do apologize for that. But I'll get this one loaded up today. And if you do have any questions while you're doing it, text me if I'm available. I try and get back to you as soon as possible, and then we can kind of try and get live, and that way I can kind of work with you, live. But yeah, first thing you need to do is just kind of jump into this and give it a crack and see how it works out. So let's go ahead and drop, and I will see y'all next Monday. So have a good one.
All right,
Take care,
peace
y'all.
out.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.